In Chapter 6, we continue the flow of food learning good practices in the stages of thawing, prepping, cooking, cooling, and reheating. Let's begin with thawing. When frozen food is thawed and exposed to the temperature danger zone, pathogens in the food will begin to grow. To reduce this growth, never thaw food at room temperature. Here we see 4 acceptable ways to thaw frozen food. First, we could simply remove the food from the freezer and place it in the cooler to thaw. Next, we can thaw frozen food under running water, not standing water, but running water that is 70 degrees or cooler. 70 degrees should look familiar. If you recall, it is the lower limit of the super danger zone, 70 to 125. We keep the running water temperature under 70 degrees when thawing to prevent the food from creeping into that extremely dangerous temperature zone. Another way to thaw food properly is to thaw in a microwave. Food thawed in a microwave, however, must not be placed in the cooler for storage, but instead should be cooked immediately after thawing to prevent pathogen growth. Our last thawing suggestion is to thaw food as part of the cooking process, meaning the frozen food naturally thaws as we begin to cook it. Like these hamburger patties. Prepping food is a crucial stage in the flow of food, with many factors potentially causing pathogen growth or other types of contamination. Each type of food should have separate equipment. For example, use one set of cutting boards, utensils, and containers for raw poultry. Use another set for raw meat. Use a third set for produce. Colored cutting boards and utensil handles can help keep equipment separate. The color tells food handlers which equipment to use with each food item. You might use yellow for raw chicken, red for raw meat, and green for produce, for example. Clean and sanitize all work surfaces, equipment, and utensils after each task. When you cut up raw chicken, for example, you cannot get by with just rinsing the equipment. Pathogens such as non-typhoidal salmonella can contaminate food through cross-contamination. To prevent this, you must wash, rinse, and sanitize equipment. Our third suggestion is to keep raw or uncooked foods away from other foods by prepping at different times of day. I could maybe prep raw food in the morning and other foods in the afternoon. Buying food that is already prepped or prepared, of course, would eliminate the risks during this stage as well. It's important to present food honestly, that is, in a way that is not misleading to the consumer. Using low lighting, colored over wraps, or color additives can be misleading and could possibly mask contamination. Misleading consumers is not only unsafe, it can also harm the reputation of your business. We learned earlier to always wear single-use gloves when handling ready-to-eat food and most other TCS foods. There are 2 exceptions to this that allow bare hand contact. Bare hand contact is allowed when washing produce. You must, however, put on gloves to then plate the produce, to slice the produce, or prepare it in any way. The pictures here show the second scenario where bare hand contact is allowed. That is when preparing foods that will then be cooked to the correct internal temperature. Like these carrots, for example. Note the exception at the bottom of the slide that correctly advises us that bare hand contact is never allowed when prepping food for high-risk populations, like daycares, hospitals, and nursing homes. Here we are cautioned that pooling eggs and egg mixtures increases risk of bacteria and contamination. A best practice is to promptly cook these pooled eggs or store the pooled eggs at 41 degrees or colder. Ice is used in a variety of ways in a food establishment. All ice needs to be made from water that is safe to drink. The word potable, or sometimes pronounced potable, is a term meaning drinkable water. Clean ice is stored in a clean ice bin. The top picture shows us correct storage of an ice scoop. Never use ice as an ingredient if it was used for any other purpose. For example, if ice is used to cool food on a salad bar, it cannot then be used in drinks. The picture below reveals 2 concerning mistakes by the food handler. The food handler is touching ice with bare hands and filling a glass in the ice bin. Broken glass in the ice bin is a harmful physical contaminant, as it is nearly impossible to see shattered glass pieces in an ice bin. We learned earlier that cooler storage order is based on minimum internal cooking temperatures. Let's take a look now at those cooking temperatures required to keep food safe. Beginning with the top shelf in storage order, we see that plant food is cooked to 135 degrees, the same temperature as the top of our danger zone. Whole pieces of fish and seafood are cooked to 145 degrees. Whole cuts of meat like steaks, chops, etc., are also cooked to 145 degrees, like our whole pieces of fish and seafood. Ground meat, including ground beef and ground pork, along with ground fish, are all cooked to 155 degrees. And finally, our birds and poultry on the bottom shelf of our storage should be cooked to 165 degrees. Note that along with our birds and other poultry, foods that are stuffed, microwaved, or reheated are also cooked to 165 degrees. Take a minute here to review and remember these important minimum internal cooking temperatures. When using a microwave to cook food, cover the food to prevent its surface from drying out. Rotate or stir halfway through the cooking process so that the heat reaches the food more evenly. Let the covered food stand for at least 2 minutes after cooking to let the food temperature even out. Check the temperature in at least 2 places to make sure that the food is cooked through. Cooling hot food can be a challenge as food must pass through the danger zones as it cools down to 41 degrees, where it can be stored safely. As you know, pathogens grow well in the temperature danger zone, and they grow much faster at temperatures between 70 degrees and 125 degrees. Food must pass through this temperature range quickly to reduce this risk. Hot food must be cooled to 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower within 6 hours. We can cool hot food in 2 phases. Starting with hot food, we first must get that food from hot to 70 degrees Fahrenheit within the first 2 hours. Then, we continue with the second phase, and that is to get the food from 70 degrees down to 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower in the next 4 hours. If you are able to cool the hot food down to 70 degrees in the first hour, you are then allowed 5 hours for the food to reach 41 degrees, for the total of 6 hours to cool hot food. Never cool large amounts of hot food in a cooler. Most coolers are not designed to cool large amounts of hot food quickly. Further, placing hot food in a cooler may not move the food through the temperature danger zone quickly enough. The thicker or more dense the food, the more slowly it will cool. Large food items obviously cool more slowly than smaller items. To help cool large or dense foods faster, like roasts or hams, for example, you could reduce its size by cutting it into smaller pieces. You can divide large containers of food, like large vats of soup, for example, into smaller or shallow pans. And stainless steel equipment tends to cool foods at a faster rate than other materials. Other cooling methods include ice water baths, as shown here by placing food pans in a clean prep sink or large pot filled with ice water. Stir the food frequently to cool it faster and more evenly. Blast chillers blast cold air across food at high speeds to remove heat. They are typically used to cool larger amounts of food quickly. Ice paddles are plastic paddles that can be filled with ice or with water, and then frozen and then used to stir hot food. When cooling soups or stews, you can add ice or cold water as an ingredient to cool it. To use this method, the recipe is initially made with less water than required. Cold water or ice is then added after cooking to cool the food and provide the remaining water. Reheating food. All food should be reheated to 165 degrees. This applies to all heating methods, such as regular ovens or microwave ovens. The note toward the bottom of the slide reminds us that foods that are stuffed or microwaved are also 165 degrees, along with birds and poultry as well.